Welcome to ILTV's Israel Daily. I'm Lauren Izzo, and coming up in this edition, anti-Netanyahu protests are building momentum, growing in numbers and conviction. Now there are some unexpected participants. Then, as Israel's health ministry scrambles to set new regulations, lab workers go on strike and the 48-hour countdown begins until the start of the new school year. And stuck at home and got the COVID-19 travel bug? Take this virtual tour of Jerusalem. It's almost like the real thing. We begin with an update from the IDF. Israeli tanks carrying out strikes in Gaza overnight, responding to fire balloons launched from the Strip, which sparked more than 20 fires in Israel over the weekend. Meanwhile, Gaza remains on lockdown over a new outbreak of COVID-19 cases. The United Nations responding to the dire situation, urging against any kind of escalation with Israel.
In and around Gaza is rapidly deteriorating. He said that militants continue to launch projectiles and incendiary devices. The tightening of closure is making life inside the Strip unbearable, with electricity down to 3 hours a day and hospitals barely functioning. Mr. Mladenov noted that while the situation in Gaza gets worse, there's a rapid increase of COVID-19 cases, with a failing health system, no electricity, unemployment soaring, continued militant activity and closures. He said that he is very concerned that escalation is imminent.
Moving now to Jerusalem, the anti-Netanyahu movement is not letting up. For more than 10 weeks, the protests urging Israel's prime minister to step down, getting louder and more aggressive. Protesters are calling out Netanyahu for his response to the global pandemic and corruption charges against him. While he doesn't seem to be bothered by them yet, the movement is now going global. Here's more. For more than 10 weeks, protesters have gathered in Jerusalem, demanding Prime Minister Netanyahu resign. Saturday night's demonstration was 20,000 strong.
I'm here because I feel we have a corrupt and incompetent government and Prime Minister and political discourse that's very dividing, divisive, and hateful. And we're led by criminals, and we want to put an end to it and make a difference.
In addition to the protests in Jerusalem, there were demonstrations held in Caesarea, outside of Netanyahu's home, and at hundreds of major intersections and bridges around the country. Calling for Netanyahu to step down over corruption charges, crowds held signs with slogans like Crime Minister and Revolution.
I'm protesting for my country. I'm hoping for better times and for peace.
16 were arrested, including a few ultra-Orthodox participants. The religious community has largely supported Netanyahu and his right-wing coalition in the past. But a recent rift over banning a Jewish pilgrimage to Ukraine has encouraged a movement of Hasidic protest. Israel police released a statement earlier asking attendees to keep the gathering calm, saying, "We call on the protesters to refrain from violence and provocation. Israel police officers are prepared and retain the right at any moment to protect and defend public order, to allow for everyone's safety, and with that, the freedom of expression of the protesters." Now, the movement is going global. Saturday night's protest was broadcast live on social media and was held in collaboration with 18 cities around the world, including Amsterdam, Boston, New York, Toronto, Madrid, Paris, and more. Mostly Israeli-born, the expat protesters are standing in solidarity with the movement, demanding Netanyahu step down in order to save the country's democracy. Lauren Izzo, ILTV. Gil Hoffman is the chief political correspondent at the Jerusalem Post, and he joins us now. Thank you, Gil, for joining us. Now, these protests are obviously spreading very fast. What does that say about the movement, and will it speak louder to the Prime Minister now that it's gone global?
No, I don't think it will, Lauren. Their quantity is important when it comes to demonstrations, so they definitely want to get as many people as possible, but so is quality. And for them to succeed, I think that they need to get a cross-section of Israeli society, as many Likud voters as possible, people in development towns, the underclass who are angry at their economic situation, taking a hit due to the coronavirus and Netanyahu's mishandling of it. That would be much more important than one very bitter man in Copenhagen and a group of as many as 100 people in some of the cities around the world.
Gil, I do want to touch as well on the ultra-Orthodox protesters that have been joining the movement. They're against the ban of Hasidic Jews in Ukraine over the holiday, but it's really changing the whole political landscape of the protests. How could this affect the anti-Netanyahu movement?
So what you had yesterday in Jerusalem near the Prime Minister's residence, along with a very large group of anti-Netanyahu, mostly very left-wing people, you had 200 Breslov Hasidim who did not fit in very well, but were very welcomed by the protesters to say, look, it's really spread. And no, these are Breslov people who are upset about our particular thing that they want that they're not getting, of not being able to go to Ukraine for Rosh Hashanah. I don't think that's what's going to threaten Netanyahu down either. It does not change the tone of the protest. When you see 50,000 Breslov people and 200 leftists, then we'll talk.
Gil, in the past, Netanyahu has called the people that are coming to these protests, criminals and hooligans. Now that the dynamic is changing, is his view of who's attending these protests changing at all?
Well, that was obviously an exaggeration as well. The overwhelming majority of the people who come to these protests are law-abiding citizens who are very upset that their prime minister allegedly is not a law-abiding citizen. They want Israel to be cleaner. They don't want to have a leader who is corrupt. And the way that Netanyahu and his family have been maligning them is grossly unfair. You're talking about people's cousins and aunts and uncles, and that makes Netanyahu lose support among the people who don't want to see their relatives maligned. This is a cross-section of Israeli society, but not enough of the part of Israeli society that can really make a difference.
If these protests do continue to grow and intensify, do you think that there's any chance that Netanyahu might actually resign as a result of this?
No. These protests aren't what's going to be what would bring Netanyahu down. What would bring Netanyahu down is if an election is initiated by him tactically at the wrong time, when things are getting out of control with the coronavirus, compounded perhaps with the flu, perhaps with too many images of him having to defend himself in court. That's what would do it, with all due respect to these protests. These protests make very good TV, but they're not impacting what Netanyahu does. You've got protests where you have left-wing people, and what can they really say when he's making peace with an Arab country or maybe more?
Okay, Gil Hoffman from the Jerusalem Post, thank you so much.
Pleasure.
Meanwhile, the ultra-Orthodox protesting against Netanyahu are doing so in more ways than one. In addition to the Hasidic group joining Saturday night's Jerusalem protests, pushback is also coming from higher up, from members of Knesset. And it all boils down to one issue: Netanyahu's response to COVID-19. Nittany Manson with the details.
With the school year set to begin and the high holidays approaching, Israel's lawmakers can't agree on the safest way to return to the norm. It's safe to say that the pandemic is creating a deep political divide in the country. Israel's former health minister and right-wing member of Knesset, Yaakov Litzman, is threatening to quit if a lockdown is implemented over the Jewish New Year, which is just a couple weeks away. Another dispute has come to light over the weekend. Around 2,000 lab workers went on strike today over a pay dispute. While coronavirus tests will continue, only those who have a positive test result will be notified. They've also warned that if they can't reach an agreement by tonight, they'll stop updating positive patients as well. With just 2 days until the beginning of the new school year, the Knesset must decide whether or not to place extra restrictions on schools in red zones, areas with more cases. Here's a breakdown of the current numbers. Since Saturday, the health ministry has recorded 898 new cases, with 121 currently in critical condition, and the death toll has surpassed 900. The government will convene this afternoon for a COVID cabinet meeting. Nittany Manson, ILTV.
Also, that pandemic is obviously not finished taking its toll on the economy. A new report by Israel's Central Bureau of Statistics is estimating that 20% of Israeli businesses will fail by 2021. Moving on now, Israel is often called Startup Nation or the tech hub of the Middle East, especially when it comes to its advanced military. A Hezbollah-affiliated news channel in Lebanon aired footage over the weekend of what appears to be an IDF dummy. That's right, the TV channel claiming a mannequin resembling an Israeli soldier was placed on the border and controlled remotely in order to confuse Lebanese forces. The network claiming it was Israel's intention to lure them into a, quote, trap. The IDF did not comment on the incident. Well, as tensions grow on the Lebanese border, other parts of the Middle East are continuing to warm up to Israel, namely the United Arab Emirates. On Monday, the first ever direct flight to Abu Dhabi will take off from Tel Aviv's Ben Gurion Airport. More in the next report. After the historic normalization between Israel and the UAE, the two countries are slowly figuring out how to work together, whether it be economy, military, or leisure. El Al released images of the Boeing 737 commercial airplane, which will carry the first travelers from Tel Aviv to Abu Dhabi on Monday on a historic flight. It will include diplomatic delegations from Israel and the U.S. On the airplane, the word peace written in English, Hebrew, and Arabic.
הנחיתי את ראש המטה לביטחון לאומי, מאיר בן שבת, לצאת בראש משלחת ישראלית מקצועית לשיחות באיחוד האמירויות בשבוע הבא. המשלחת הזאת תפעל יחד עם צוות אמריקני שגם הוא יבוא לשם, יחד עם צוות מקביל של איחוד האמירויות, לקדם את השלום והנורמליזציה בין ישראל לאיחוד האמירויות.
Meanwhile, senior advisor to the U.S. President Jared Kushner arrived in Israel today and will travel with that Israeli delegation to the UAE on Monday's flight.
On August 13th, President Trump, Prime Minister Netanyahu, and the Crown Prince Mohammed bin Zayed announced a historic peace agreement that will create previously unthinkable economic and security, religious opportunities between the two of the greatest countries in this region. There is still much work left to accomplish, but the Abraham Accords is a giant step forward. To have played a role in its creation, and I say this as the grandson of two Holocaust survivors, it means more to me and to my family than I can ever express. We will continue to pursue peace between Israel, the biblical homeland of the Jewish people, and its Arab and Muslim neighbors, and I have never been more hopeful about peace.
The UAE also announcing in a statement an official termination of their previous boycott of Israeli-made products, the move making way for immense economic and commercial collaboration.
ואני מקווה שמדינות נוספות באזורנו יצטרפו למעגל השלום. אני מקווה שגם אתם, אזרחי ישראל, תוכלו לבקר בקרוב גם בדובאי, גם באבו דאבי. יש הרבה מה לראות שם.
The normalization is certainly changing the Middle East landscape, but can the momentum maintain without the voice of the Palestinians? We'll have to wait and see. Lauren Izzo, ILTV. Want to go on a tour of the alleys of the old city of Jerusalem? Climb Mount Masada, maybe surf the beach in Tel Aviv, or float in the Dead Sea? Well, due to COVID-19, that might be more difficult these days. So the team behind Taglit, or Birthright, realized that they need to make some adjustments. They now offer a virtual tour that takes you to Israel from the comfort of your own home. Noah Bauer, VP of Global Marketing at Taglit Birthright Israel, is joining us in studio. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So I'm sure you were disappointed when all of these trips and flights were canceled. First of all, what did you think about it, and how did you begin to recover from all these trips being canceled?
So first of all, Birthright Israel is existing for the last 20 years,
right.
And we've never, ever canceled a trip, not during intifadas and
not
wars.
One ever?
Never, ever we canceled a trip
until
the corona pandemic has hit. So it was devastating for us, and we actually thought that we're going to be very back on our feet again, but the world is as we all know, is a very hard situation now with the pandemic.
Of course.
We stopped in March. We still had groups on the ground when the skies closed in Israel, and we've canceled all of our summer trips till date.
So what is your solution to these canceled trips? What solution have you given to people that want to come visit Israel during this difficult time?
So obviously the skies are still closed. It's starting to open, and we're having first groups on the ground that are going through quarantine. So we're seeing small slims of people coming in, but it's very, very tiny. And in the meantime, we need to talk to them virtually. So there's a big space online, and we've done many initiatives until now, hitting over 4 million people that we've engaged with since March until now, and this interactive tour is one of them.
So you're saying I can visit Israel virtually, like pretending I'm not in Israel right now, but if I wasn't in Israel, I could take a virtual tour to basically any area of Israel that I want? How does it work?
So not any area. I
Okay.
mean, Birthright Israel is a 10-day tour, very, very intense, and you visit all of Israel pretty much. And what we want to hit, Gen Z generation and millennials. We need to have a very, very short period of time with them. So in 8 minutes, you can visit many, many places, but it's a 1 day of Birthright Israel trip. And I think the most exciting thing about it is it's interactive.
So it's a choose your own adventure style?
Exactly.
How does it work?
So basically, you start off with an ancient site, so you can either go to Masada or go to the Kotel, and within every place, you can decide if you want to go up Snake Path or Cable Car, and then you go to hit innovation. So we want to see the old and the new, and we want to see fun places, so you can go to the Dead Sea or you can go to the beach, you can find people, meet people, and I think the most exciting thing about Birthright is that you meet Israelis on the ground. So every place you go on during this interactive tour, although you have a tour guide, you meet Israelis.
But you won't be able to experience the Israeli heat, the summer heat, unfortunately. Exactly. Okay, so how many people have already taken this virtual tour?
So we just started. We had 50,000 people in the platform so far, but we do expect to have about 500,000 people by the time we finish and we start the media campaign worldwide. We're now translating it into different languages, so we expect it to be very big.
I just want to put that into perspective as opposed to how many people were actually, their trips were canceled from Birthright. So you said how many people were visiting the virtual site? 50,000 people have taken the virtual tour, as opposed to how many of your clients' trips were canceled?
So during the summer, 35,000 people trips were canceled. We're still hoping for them to come in the near future. I think that during 2021, we'll be able to bring all of them back. And since the beginning, we had 750,000 people visit Israel on Birthright.
Wow. So. Do you think that maybe, this virtual tour of Israel could continue into the future, maybe after the flights are taking off again?
Sure, absolutely. I think a lot of the things that we're doing now are going to last afterwards as well, including Zoom reunion meetings with the participants before and after. Birthright Israel is a one-time thing, but it lasts for a lifetime. Right. And I think that engaging with these people afterwards as well is just a gift for us as well.
And it's a great alternative, but it's not the same as actually coming here, right?
It's just a teaser. It's just, we want all of them to come. Everyone that goes through that tour needs to come to Israel and visit this country on their own.
So for all the people that want to take this virtual tour, what's like the most exciting place you can recommend that they visit virtually?
Oh, they need to go through the whole tour.
The whole tour?
So I'll let them choose.
Can you give them like a top two?
You can either choose if you want to eat mild or spicy. It's that
really
detailed, yes.
Wow.
So it's the experience is amazing.
Wow. It's really like you're there.
Exactly.
All right, Noah Bauer, thank you so much. And I will be going to take that tour tonight.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Moving on now, the MerriamWebster dictionary is redefining the word apartheid, removing Israel as an example in its pages. It defines the term as, quote, racial segregation, and under its examples from the web, it includes an article accusing Israel of carrying out apartheid policies. After a reader complained, the company responded that it had removed the post. Since, a new petition is asking the dictionary to put that link back. So far, they have not commented on the reaction. Well, wildfires are raging in California as a result of the hot, dry weather and sparked by lightning. More than 1.2 million acres have burned, and California is under a state of emergency. Now, Israel wants to offer its expertise. A delegation of Israeli firefighters departed Ben Gurion Airport overnight to offer them a helping hand. Israel's Foreign Minister Gabi Ashkenazi said the mission is representative of the close friendship between the two nations. Trav Hawley from the California Air National Guard tweeted, "We appreciate the help from Israel here in California." And now we'll move on to something a little tastier. It's all about tacos. Today we are hosting in the studio a couple who brings Tel Aviv the most popular breakfast dish across the southern U.S. Ronnie Moscona and Danny Stollers, owner of Lone Star Tacos IL, are joining us with their tacos and burritos. I'm so excited to have you guys here. Thank you so much for joining me.
We're also very excited.
Okay, so did you bring tacos or did you bring burritos? What's the deal?
Okay, so these are breakfast tacos.
Breakfast tacos.
Yeah, the difference is usually the size of the tortilla.
Okay. Okay.
And these are wrapped in
filling as well.
And the filling. The burrito is more rice.
Okay.
Things for lunch, and it's a really hearty meal. It's a big taco. It's a burrito, excuse me.
Okay.
These are tacos, soft shell. They're smaller. They actually come in 3 when our clients get it. So we brought 3 tacos, bacon, egg, and cheese, sausage, egg, and cheese, and potato, egg, and cheese. These are the classics. When you go to a restaurant in Austin, Texas, anywhere else.
Can you please explain to me how you guys got the idea for this, and why tacos in Tel Aviv? How does that work?
So Ronnie moved to Israel about 12 years ago, and from what I hear, we only know 7 years, but he told me that ever since he moved here, he just missed the food he grew up on, and he couldn't find it anywhere. And there are Mexican restaurants here in Tel Aviv,
right?
But none of them offer this dish, which was his go-to basically every morning.
There's no place that sells them.
If you don't mind, I'm going to take a bite while you explain.
Absolutely. It's great with salsa.
Let me try it plain first. I don't want to make a mess.
And there were a couple Mexican restaurants here. There weren't many, but definitely not the breakfast taco. It's something that we're used to every morning.
Wow.
Before school,
really good.
or coworkers would bring it to their office.
Okay.
And it just comes in bundles.
So obviously, yeah, you're a taco burrito lover, but you started this idea during, the global pandemic, COVID-19. Why don't you tell me how you got started? Did it have anything to do with you being laid off, anything like that?
Well, I worked at a restaurant called Brasserie.
Okay.
And they closed down, like many of us know. And it's just been a dream of mine to try and open one of these, maybe a taco truck or food truck. And so I decided, why not now? Capital.
So it must be interesting for you guys to work together. What are each of your roles in this endeavor?
Well, I'm in charge of the food.
Okay. So you make everything?
Everything from scratch.
Wow.
Including this soft tortilla.
Including the tortilla.
And you make the tortillas from scratch?
From scratch.
Wow.
Handmade, hand rolled every morning. Cooked every morning, 5 o'clock in the morning. I wake up, start working on tortillas.
Wow.
And then I do all the wrapping and packaging, assembling it.
She deals with the clients.
And that.
And you guys just had a baby?
Yep.
Just had a baby.
How do you handle, starting a business when you just had a baby? How does that work?
You're kind of juggling a baby in one hand.
Yeah.
And what's the baby's job in the company?
Well, to make us happy.
Yeah, moral
To
support.
make you happy. That's so sweet.
She loves my tortillas.
So I'm sure, how can she not? They're delicious. So right now you guys are basing your business from home, right?
Correct.
And are there any plans for expansion in the future, maybe?
Yeah, I would hope so.
Love that.
This was our first month.
Okay.
It was kind of, let's say, a pilot.
Okay.
And we've been getting good feedback.
I'm curious, about the feedback. Like, what do Israelis say about this kind of food?
They love it.
Yeah. There wasn't one bad feedback. Like, people just, it's what they were waiting for, because Israelis, they eat eggs, they eat meat.
Right.
They eat all of this,
Right.
but never in one dish.
Never together.
Is it mostly Israelis buying from you guys? Is it mostly Americans? What are your customers like?
It's split between both.
Really?
Yeah. A lot of people want to try something new. A lot of Israelis, especially Tel Aviv, they want to try something new. We're offering something new. Not to me, because I grew up on it, but to the crowd in Tel Aviv. I don't think they've tried it before, and they should.
And you also have some vegan options, I understand.
Correct.
That's true.
That is to cater more for the Tel Aviv crowd.
Okay, and what exactly are you offering to the vegan community?
First off, the tortilla is, a classic tortilla is made with butter or lard.
Okay.
How the grandmas would make it. And so are vegan tortillas with oil instead. The filling is something similar to ground beef. So we're kind of going away from the breakfast, but it's still tasty. We've had good feedback.
Okay, really quickly, what is the sort of thing you recommend most to your customers? The item that everybody has to try?
A combo.
A combo of the three?
Yes.
See what they
Three
like.
pack?
They need to try it out. If they've never tried it before, I would go with a combo.
All right.
See what you like most.
Sounds like a great suggestion. Okay, thank you guys so much for coming in and best of luck.
Thank you,
Absolutely.
Lauren.
Well, that was delicious. Now let's take a look at the weather forecast. The heat wave continues. Tonight will be a high of 71 degrees Fahrenheit or 22 degrees Celsius. And tomorrow will be a high of 99 degrees Fahrenheit or 37 degrees Celsius. All right, that's it for today's news. Today's exchange rate is 3.36 shekels to the American dollar. For more news from ILTV, please like ILTV on Facebook, follow us on Instagram, and subscribe to our YouTube and Roku TV pages. I'm Lauren Izzo. Thank you so much for watching.